Well, listen to you is an invitation to awaken in the different ways.
Yes,
To
that's right.
connect
That's
to
right.
the inner self, to think about what happened to me, what's going on, where I'm going.
Yeah. And I mean, there are two ways to go about it, two big ways. You know, as Amanda Blake, one of my former doctoral students who's written books and does a lot of training on somatic awareness. Are you tuned into what's happening in your body? It's amazing how many, I mean, women are more tuned in than men, but even women get out of tune.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dan Goleman and I have always had emotional self-awareness at the center of these things. But about 25 years ago, I started saying, Dan, there are times in which going inside is not the way to help somebody start the process. It may be getting them to go outside of themselves. And this is where I think coaching ends up being so powerful, because I think there are a lot of people who can start the process of increased self-awareness by caring for somebody else. Dixon Chabandra, a psychiatrist in Zimbabwe, has this phenomenal book that he published, but a practice he started. He noticed in these remote villages that when people, and he's a full psychiatrist, when people were suffering from depression, they wouldn't go into the clinics because of the stigma.
Mm.
And he noticed that people would talk to grandmothers. So he started a process which is now called a friendship bench. He actually builds a bench, puts it about 100 yards from the clinic, and he trains some of the local grandmothers to sit there and listen.
Wow.
And it has been a huge impact of the number of people who are helped by it directly, or because of that, they then feel they could go into the clinic and get the more formal help that they need. And these friendship benches are now spread to many different countries. But it's a simple way to get somebody out of their panic, out of their fear. Because, you know, who doesn't like talking to a grandmother? I mean, in some countries it's talking to a bartender, but still, it's the same. It's similar.
Well, Latin American country, we have a very, very close with their parents, grandparents, with
Yeah,
family,
well, all right.
Italian and Spanish way to
Sí.
live our lives.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we are talking about leaders, maybe some leaders and well-meaning leaders want to foster well-being, but sometimes this practice create resistance inside the organization. What practices would you suggest as to counterbalance the leadership approach?
Well, if you realize that you're not going to get anywhere without a shared vision, and shared means people feel it. Well, how are they going to feel it unless they talk about it? So just because a leader says, let's be an organization with well-being, doesn't mean a thing. I mean, I have in some of our earlier leadership papers and books, and in the one that was the international bestseller, Primal Leadership, we made the point that leadership isn't about the leader, it's about the relationship that they have with the people around them. Because you can't be a leader without followers. And just because people report to you does not mean they're followers. They could be spitting in your coffee before they bring it to you. So the point is that you have to be able to talk to people. And if you want to initiate change, you have to spread the dialogue. Because just because the leader says this is important to us, some people may follow that because the leader says it, because they're dependent in a way on that leader. But I don't think it's sustainable. You know, those are the leaders that at some point the followers feel betrayed and then they hang them, quite literally. So if you're in a leadership position, I think the first move is to have a whole series of discussions about what's our purpose here. And there is no organization in the world whose purpose is to make money. That's the measure of how well you're doing. It's not the purpose.
This has to do in some way to the resonant relationships,
Right.
and how they generate positive and opens to change. So what defines for you a resonant relationship at work, and how can leaders build this resonant
Right.
relationship?
We started talking about it in the 2002 book, and then it was so much demand for it. Annie McKee and Dan didn't want to write another book about leadership at that point, that we wrote the 2005 book, Resonant Leadership, which also came out in Spanish, as well as Becoming a Resonant Leader, 2008, and then even Helping People Change is out in Spanish, the 2019 book. I think my latest book, Oxford University Press, is in discussions with the Spanish publisher, but the Spanish version hasn't come out yet, The Science of Change. Anyway, that led some of my doctoral students, who I teach in an executive doctoral program. The average age is 49 when they start. So they have lives. And one of them said, I'm consulting to all of these social service agencies in a state. And he said, I would like to help them with this leadership style. So even though I'd started giving some workshops at McKinsey about resonant leadership as a style, it forced me in 2007 to develop a new measure and to start doing the research to say, what exactly is resonant leadership relationship like? Well, we got about 2,000 studies, about half of which were published. And by 2014, one of my other PhD students, who's now Kylie Rochford on the faculty of the University of Utah, she said, I think you're onto something here, but the steps you used to develop some of the items were a little sloppy. She said, I think we could fix that. I said, sure, let's do it. So she and I dug in, and we came up with a revised instrument. And since then, there've been another now 36 studies. And every time it's used, it predicts leadership effectiveness, professional effectiveness, even in non-leadership jobs. It predicts what's called organizational citizenship. Will you do more than your job requires? Do you feel a part of this? It predicts engagement, and it predicts product and process innovation. So what is it? To date, it has 3 characteristics. 1, you have a degree of shared vision, not goals, vision. So you and the others, whether they're the leader or the followers, whether they're people in a family or a team or a community, feel that you're pursuing the same purpose. 2, it has a high degree of shared compassion. You care about each other and you feel cared for. It's more than empathy, it's caring, it's an action. And 3, and this is the one that changed. In the early test, we had a positive mood. Now we found in the 2014 test, it's really not that, but shared energy. And I'll use the example. I don't know if the 2 of you have partners or are married, but if you have 2 people that are in an intimate relationship, and one likes to go out and dance and have a good time, and the other doesn't, they want to sit at home, things are not well, because they're not literally vibrating on the same frequency. So shared energy ends up being important. So what we're saying is a resonant relationship has multiple parties in the relationship feeling the same degree of shared vision, shared compassion, shared energy. Doesn't mean everybody in a team or organization, but many.
Mhm.
Well, you talk about awakening. What role do you think that the counseling, the coaching, or neuroscience should play in the shaping new models of leadership and organization transformation? Do you think that they're prepared to awaken it or not?
Yes. I think on the whole, science helps us, but we have to be a little careful. And the careful is be careful about pseudoscience.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of people in coaching, for example, who proselytize that they're doing evidence-based coaching. Ask them what the evidence is. It's usually clouds. Oh, well, people feel good. Give them a drink, they'll feel good. I mean, so I think that for us to move further, for us in our helping relationships to have what I call intellectual integrity, we have to base it on research, and we have to be continuing to do research. Do every one of us have to do that? No, but we have to know people who are, and we have to, at the minimum, be a good consumer of research. So our 2019 book on helping people change was written for practitioners, coaches, physicians, nurses, parents, managers. My 2024 book, my recent book, in which I attempted to integrate all 58 years of all of my work, but I also cited the work of just under 2,000 other scholars, is not written in that same style. It's really written for scholars and advanced professionals. Now, an advanced professional maybe somebody who does some research and writing, but what's more importantly, there's somebody who's concerned about studying the integrity or what's behind the claims. So we know neuroscience is important, but in the 90s, I remember one of my friends, I was working a lot in Italia at the time, and Franco Ratti says to me, he called me Rick, and that's saying, Rick, what is this thing about NLP? He said, people are trying to get excited about it. So I'd heard about it, but didn't know much about it. I'd been president of an industry association in the training field. So I called around a number of scholars and a number of heads of companies, and I found out that there was not one piece of evidence, not one piece of research to support what NLP was training people all over the world to do. So I said to Franco, I said, it may be right, but it may be snake oil. We don't know. Now, flash forward 30 years. The current level of neuroscience has helped us to understand that about half of the things that NLP claimed were in fact true. So, for example, NLP said you should try something new by repeating it. Well, we now know that when you do not just repetition or practice, but deliberate practice, as they say, it helps. And literally, it creates a new neural network that you're going to use when you do it. There are other parts of NLP, the other half of it, as proselytized throughout the 90s, that was just not there. So that's what I mean. So if people aren't doing research, they at least owe it to their clients, if not to themselves, to say, we're going to be careful that we're not going to do the latest fad, because the latest fads might seem politically correct, but that's another word for prejudice. So the same kind of thinking that in the 1980s said, there's no way a woman could be a good plumber. And most people doubted that women could be good CEOs because they would cry and feel emotional, both of which were ridiculous statements.
Yes.
But, so today we push other fads, and we have to be very careful if they're ideologically driven, it doesn't mean they're wrong, but it doesn't mean they're right either.
So you
So
have
that's why I wrote this latest book, to try to help people, ground what they're doing and what research really is out there.
That's great. Thank you for that. So, you as I feel that you are kind of with this research and these theories and all that you have, it's a kind of worldwide, but we are here from the South and from Latin America and the global South, and in some way think about how leadership from this part of the world can improve, and how can we help this leadership in situated in the global South. And so what would be your advices to them to sustain their leadership without losing their humanity or without burning out in the way? Or how can they cultivate a truly resonant leadership, even within contexts that make them stressed or uncertain? Or
we're all very aware of our differences, so you don't have to spend much time in your part of the world without thinking that, well, if you're Chilean, on the whole, you're going to act differently than if you're Brazilian or if you're Argentinian. I mean, to take the bigger ones, excuse me, the Uruguayan. So I don't mean that we should ignore our cultural preferences and differences, but there's some things that are universal.
Yeah.
And one of those is caring and having hope for the future are universally positive.
Yeah.
They help humans in every country, on every continent, including Antarctica, in every gender, in every faith, in every race. And in the process of trying to be sensitive to the differences, I think sometimes we go overboard without realizing that there are some things that are the same. And helping others, caring for others, feeling hopeful about the future, taking personal responsibility while feeling a sense of social responsibility. These are all parts of being human. So, I mean, we could be simple about it and quote John Lennon, all you need is love, but sometimes you need some other stuff too. So I think that without trying to ignore cultural differences, I think we could still use them and play to them. So as one of my, sadly she passed away, but one of my really good friends who was American but lived in Sao Paulo for 45 years, and her husband was Paraguayan. He was senior faculty at the University of Sao Paulo, and the two of them would say they could go to Portugal and understand the Portuguese, and they could even be understood because they speak somewhat the same language. But I remember Debbie saying, but the Portuguese just don't move like we Brazilians do. And I'm thinking about, the Gilbertos, dun, 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 dun. So, is that a difference? Yes. And, and certainly there are cultural differences between Argentinians and Brazilians, that not just Spanish and Portuguese, but other differences. And, and over the ages, we have different forms of migrations that also affect those cultural things. But when it comes down to it, we're still human.
Yeah.
So what I'd say is, if you want to be a more effective leader, you start with the fact that it's all about relationships. And you can't have a relationship unless you talk to each other. And artificial intelligence will not replace that. In fact, it threatens it. So while artificial intelligence can help us with a lot of things, and can help us especially with curiosity and seeing patterns that we didn't before, it will not replace developing caring relationships.
Well, before we close this conversation, it was a pleasure, a huge pleasure for us to accept this invitation to talk. And well, what do you have? Could you share with us a phrase or to summarize your legacy?
I wrote a book about that. I wrote a book about that. It sounds crass that I'm trying to sell the book, but it's the ideas and the spirit. I put everything I've thought about for the past 60 years into that book. I believe in the human spirit. I was just saying yesterday in a quote, I gave a quote for somebody's book cover. I said, the doomsayers today would have us believe we're on a path to oblivion, but we're still here.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as we think the world is in chaos today, believe me, the people that were alive in 500 BC felt the same thing. The people that were alive in 1200 to 1300 AD, when the Black Plague was killing, 1 out of every 3 people, felt the same thing. The people in 1450 to 1550,
mm-hmm.
when we discovered each of our countries.
Yes.
Or I should say, Europeans discovered each of our countries. That we've gone through a lot of crazy times. I mean, look, the 20th century was a time of amazing invention and amazing horror. Stalin killed 20 million Russians.
Mm-hmm.
Mao killed 30 million of his own people, Chinese. The Nazis killed 6 million Jews. I mean, all these wars. And yet, we invented the cure for polio, the cure for smallpox, and cure for a lot of diseases. And we invented the transistor, which gave rise to computers, which gave rise to other things. We walked on the moon. We found a way through fMRI to look inside of people's brains. So I do believe in the resilience of the human being, on our adaptability and innovation. And while I don't think we should put our head in the sand, because there are bad people out there and there are movements that would diminish our freedoms and our spirit. So we shouldn't be vulnerable to that. But on the whole, if we look ahead to what we might be, I think we'll get there.
Well,
now, you originally scheduled this for 30 minutes.
Yes.
You've now gone almost an hour and a half.
This is crazy.
Does that mean you're going to make 3 episodes for your digital magazine?
Probably.
Like a Netflix series.
Yes,
episode 1, episode 2, episode 3.
Yeah, that's
And then
great.
if people really like it, promise we'll come back with season 2.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I feel, I feel very emotional about.
Good.
Yeah, thank you so much. You're very generous. And what?
Well, we hope to see you here in Buenos Aires or maybe in Montevideo. Who knows?
Yes. Yes, please.
Yes,
yeah.
we're due for a trip.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you very much. You are very, very kind, very generous with us. And I hope Conexión Austral, well, for
Let me know when you publish.
Yes, of
Because
course.
Yes.
I can also announce it on the social media.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
This would be great.
When you publish it, well, we're speaking in English, so that part of it would be in English.
Yes.
Yeah.
We probably next September. I hope so. I'm not sure, but maybe at the late September. And Marita traveled to the States in September.
Yes, I'll be at the Science Summit of the 80th Assembly of the United Nations, participating in an event that is organized by the European Brain Council in New York. So I will be there. And also this is in September, and then in November I will be at the Society for Neuroscience meeting in San Diego. So
I will be in September going back and forth to Cleveland for my teaching, plus because I live in Boston.
But also in Boston, yeah.
Yeah, my wife and I are going to go to Prague and Vienna. We haven't been there.
Okay.
We'll visit.
Okay. I've been part of my research has to do with the science education, and in 2019 we got a project to create a kind of a fabrication lab at the school where the teachers study to become a school. And then I went to the MIT to a conference to present. To present.
I call that
project.
visiting a mothership.
Yes.
I realized the phone call that I keep getting is somebody who I said I'd meet with at 10:30. So
okay.
Well,
thank you so much.
Good luck. Thank you very much, and let me know how it goes. How your
yes, of course.
how your audience responds.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.